Welcome back for the last video in this series. A lot of things to be done in this video, so let's get to it. First thing I need to do is fix the ejection port tear out and shape up where the action sits a bit. I start with a little filing and added a guideline to file to. After a few minutes with the file and sandpaper was pretty much where I wanted it. I changed the profile around the rear of the action. The pencil mark shows the top of the action. I used the rasp file to quickly bring this down closer to final shape. Next, we have to finish the shaping. My Bosch 6-inch sander will easily handle that. It can be very aggressive depending on what mode you're running it on. First step is to mark the stock up with a pencil, then come in with the sander with 80 grit to shape and flatten it. I'm paying a fair bit of attention to the grip as it does need to be rounded more to fit the hand better. Another consideration is the butt pad and getting everything symmetrical. I mark up the stock with a pencil and proceed to remove material until I'm happy with it. Moving on to the grip is next, and it is the hardest part. Not only does it need to fit your hand, but it needs to be symmetrical so it looks good. Same deal as before. Mark it up with a pencil and shape it. I use the file and 80 grit sandpaper wrapped on a round pencil to do 90% of the work here. In the video, you'll see me work at it for a minute, then I step back to examine it to see what needs more work. This 3-minute video is a snapshot of the 30 minutes I spent on it. After I'm done, it's nearly perfectly symmetrical by my eye, and that's close enough. The flats on the stock are simple enough, but I did want to maintain them, so I took some care to make sure I didn't round them over. I put the stock in the vise, and with a guideline, I worked at flattening everything with 80 grit. I go back multiple times and scribble in so I can track progress. Once I'm happy with the angled flat, I clean up the flat edge. From there, it's just a rinse and repeat on the other side. Here it is, all roughed in with 80 grit. Shape is about 95% of where I want it. At some point in time, I started the bolt handle notch, but we'll get back to that later. I'm overall happy with it, but it's time to move on and move up the grits toward finish. My 5-inch Makita sander does a good job and is easier to control than the 6. I sand from 80 to 150 and then 220 with it, and then finish with 320 by hand. Good sandpaper is a must for a good finish. Bolt handle notch is a pretty simple operation. Set the action in, trace out the location, give it a little cut with a pull saw, and chisel in size fairly close. I gave it a little cleanup and rounding with a file and sandpaper to depth and called it done. The butt pad fit up I knew was going to be a challenge. Limb Saver has a great video on how a pro does it, but I'm hardly a pro. I will say a good belt grinder would make this 50 times easier, but I just have a 3x21 belt sander. I started with sticking on the butt pad with double-sided tape on some guide nails. You can see I need to remove a bit from the top and bottom and trim it closer to shape. I scribed the back of the butt pad with a sharp O-ring pick so I have a clean line I can cut and sand to. Originally, I had thought an 80 grit belt would be enough to grind this into shape, but boy was I wrong. One trip to the hardware later and I had a fresh 36 grit belt. I also threw the pad in the freezer overnight as the soft rubber was far harder to grind than frozen rubber. It shaped up pretty easily in the sander after this, and I had the pad to size. After this, I had to remove a bit more of the butt pad with the sander to get the fit a little bit closer. Didn't take a photo, but the butt pad is about 1/32 of an inch smaller than the end of the stock when finished. As I'm now happy with the shape and all the major things are done, it is time for finish. I rounded it over the magwell with a 1/8 inch routed over bit and router to get an even profile. Then it was about another hour of sanding with 320 on a block for the flats and 320 in hand for rounded areas. One thing about sanding, buy good sandpaper. I use two brands. 3M for anything that comes in a sheet, and Duragold for my powered sanders. You can waste a lot of time with shitty sandpaper and have inferior results, so buy the good stuff. You'll be glad you did. Prep for finish starts with me cleaning up my garage so I don't have a ton of dust floating around during finishing. Next is taping off the bedding job as I don't want polyurethane on it. Last step is to wet a lint-free cloth with mineral spirits and wipe off anything and everything from the wood. This might be a controversial pick for a finish, but in the interest of getting a good finish easily, I went with Wipe On Poly. It's oil-based and I'm very familiar with it, so I know how to use it. As a side note, if you want to make Wipe On Poly, just mix oil-based polyurethane mineral spirits 50-50. I just bought the can because I actually didn't have any oil-based poly on hand, and this is simple. The added benefit of a wipe-on poly is that it soaks into the wood, builds up slow, and dries fast, giving a very smooth finish. It just takes a lot of coats. I would avoid using a water-based finish as it is not very durable. I'm going to voice over the sanding and application of the 10th and last coat of finish with the video at double speed to keep this to the point. I'm giving it a quick inspection here. Make sure there's no raised up spot on the stock. The sanding sponge I'm using is extremely worn out. It might be 440 at best. But the point here isn't really to sand as so much as to make sure everything is nice and smooth and give that last coat of finish something to hook onto so that it, just doesn't peel off and doesn't look like fake plastic on your gun. So give it a quick once over, real light. Nothing crazy here. Like I said, this is 10 coats in. When I started this, the first 3 coats I actually put down without sanding at all because it soaks in so much. We're going to wipe the stock down, get all the dust off, making sure that it's nice and clean. We don't want that dust in the finish because it will raise up little nibs in your finish. Now, grab a nice old chunk of t-shirt, put some finish on it. And we're just going to rub it on here real quick. It ain't got to be anything fancy. That's the thing I like about this finish. It's really, really easy. Got to make sure we hit everything. And I'm just kind of putting a little bit more of a heavy coat on here, but I'm still rubbing it in nice. And you can see how shiny that stock is. And that's how it actually ends up in the end. Add a little more finish to the rag. Let's move on to the butt. Get in the bottom. Way to bang it off the saw and almost put a dent in the stock. Hit the butt pad, seal it up a little more. Inspecting for any little imperfections and stuff like that. And now I'm happy with it, so we're going to set it up here. And that last coat, I made sure I hit the bottom and I didn't touch anything because now I'm just trying to get that last little wipe on to get it nice and smooth. And I'm trying not to touch the stock very much at this point in time. Just give it all a nice once over. Just hold it down without touching it as much as possible. And that's it. Overall, I'm very happy with the finish. 10 coats really wasn't too bad because wipe-on poly is easy to apply. It really requires minimal sanding and it dries very fast. It ends up feeling very smooth and soft to the touch and is more than shiny enough for me. If you want something more shiny or more durable, you will need to take it somewhere and probably have it sprayed with clear coat. With the finish done, it's time to start with assembly. First will be the Area 419 Arca rail. I like this rail largely due to the weights in it, and it's an excellent piece. I mark up where I want the screws to be for starters, then drill a small hole at each location to get me a transfer into the barrel channel side. I looked at the screws that came with the rail, and while they would be fine with a much thinner forend, mine is quite thick. A quick trip to the hardware store for some 1032 screws gets me closer to where I want to be. I do need to reduce the size of the head slightly, so a quick operation to reduce the size in the drill press. I drilled in the pocket for the T-nuts to sit in about with a 3/4 inch Forstner bit. From there I set the T-nuts with a deep well socket and a hammer. Then flip the stock over and screw the rail down. Phillips head really aren't my favorite, but they will work for this. Mounting the butt pad is pretty simple. We drill the mounting holes out a bit and stick the screws through the butt pad and screw it down. The stock sticks out about a 32nd of an inch past the pad, which I'm happy with. The finish on the butt pad from shaping it, I'm not happy with, but good enough in this case. I need to set a nut in the trigger inlet for the rearmost DBM screw. I tape off everything and apply release agent to all of it. Mix up and add a little bit of DevCon into the stock. Then set the DBM on it with a screw holding the nut where it needs to be for depth. Once set up, that nut is more than adequate to hold the rear of the DBM. Let's move on to head spacing. I put my head space gauge in, put the wrench on because you don't want to forget that. Screw the nut down. I have put a little bit of aeroshell grease on the threads because galling is a thing with stainless steel and I may want to take this apart someday. Thread it all the way forward. I did take the extractor and ejector out of the bolt, put on the recoil lug, start threading down the action, slide in the bolt because we're basically going to run it in until it touches the go gauge. And, well, that's what happens when you don't quite, have your shit together. And somebody didn't redden the nut all the way forward like you said so. But we're almost there. And you can see right there I got a contact. So we're going to tighten that nut up just a little bit so we can try to figure out where we're sitting at. Right now I'm going to close the bolt on that go gauge. And you can see me, I tightened it up just a little bit right there. And it feels pretty good right there. And I'm running the bolt in and out just to see how it is. I want to make sure my bolt lift isn't real tight or anything like that. Put the wrench on it, grab a torque wrench. I torque my Savage barrels to 50 foot-pounds. It's more than enough. And then somebody proceeds to turn the nut backwards rather than the correct way. There we go. Got her in the right spot. Now you can see right there the action twisted on me, and that's bad. And I'm going to have to come back and fix that. It clicked over at 50. And it still works, and the bolt will still close, but my headspace isn't where I want it. So let's break it loose with a ratchet. Talk about almost having a knuckle buster there. I come back and I'm going to check it closing on the go gauge again. I'm going to snug the nut up about right where I want it. This time I'm going to hold the action on it, just preload it a little bit so it doesn't spin. Wrench is still set for 50 foot-pounds. Make sure I get a good right angle so I got an accurate torque reading. And there's the click. So we're good. And it still looks good. Now we're going to check our head spacing a second and make sure it's right. I took my go gauge and I put a little piece of tape on the end of it. Going to put it in the chamber. Going to close the bolt on it. You can see it only goes down maybe a quarter of a turn, just starting to engage. That's right where you want it. Pretty easy. Spin the vise. Use a cleaning rod so I can poke the what is now a no-go gauge out into my hand. Make sure you don't drop it on the floor. It's not very good for precision grounds things. Gonna peel the tape off. Give the vise a little spin back. Now that is now a go gauge, we'll pop that back in the chamber and we'll check to make sure that our bolt still closes. And that's exactly right where you want it. With the head spacing done, it's time to put it together, right? Nope, Mr. Murphy said that's not happening, so on to plan B. The stock where the bolt release was too high to allow it to be fully pressed to release the bolt. I elected to just shape it at the same height as the ejection port and continue that line in the stock. From there, it was just a bunch of quarts of poly, which is what delayed this video a couple of days. With the stock finally done, we can do the final assembly. I will be torquing this action to about 45 inch-pounds. Normal torque for a wood or plastic stock is about a 40, and the chassis is about 50 according to Stavage. I feel that the 40 they recommend for a plastic or wood stock is a bit much due to it not being that rigid. and deformation of the material is a real possibility. Due to the bedding job and full pillars, 45 will be fine for my setup. I start with just getting the screws just snug to get everything in place. Then I'll give the rifle butt a sharp hit on the floor a couple of times to set the lug where it needs to be. From there, I torque to 30 front and then rear, and then 40 front, then rear, and finally 45 front, then rear. Now that it's done, we can put the scope back on and shoot it finally. Final thoughts. Let's start with this video, then I'll wrap it up with an overall. I cannot stress how important it is to sand and shape everything and then bring it up through the grits with sandpaper. If you want a good finish, don't cut corners. Butt pad fit up was a bit of a pain, and if I was going to do this a lot, I'd own a belt grinder. Shaping wasn't hard, but getting it smooth was difficult. The Minwax wipe-on poly is really simple and allows for a slow build-up to get a really nice finish that you can't get with full-strength poly and a brush. It also dries really fast, which makes it easier to build up coats. The installation of the Arca rail and butt pad are dead simple. Head spacing of Savage is easy. I think it took me about 6 or 7 minutes. Just need to make sure the bolt doesn't close on the no-go. Replacement Savage barrels are easy to get and aren't crazy money, so if your gun isn't shooting great, replace the barrel. The only real hiccup I had was the bolt release, but that was easy enough to modify as well to get it working correctly. Overall thoughts on the entire project. This project went smoothly for the first time I've ever built a stock. I did have to acquire a handful of tools, which my wife always appreciates. I'm going to point out the things that didn't work out as planned. The templates for inletting were a solid idea, but I need to have more care on how I index them on the blank. Next inlet I do, I will make improvements there, as it was far easier than using a chisel. Cross bolts look good, but the ones in the grip are a bit off center if I'm going to nitpick at it. The last thing, and it irritates me the most, the inlet for the trigger guard portion of the DBM. I screwed up my pattern when I cut it out, and that removed too much material, making it impossible to set it into the underside of the stock. The gap there is visible, and while most will never know, I will. I guess I'll get over it eventually. Let's get a few beauty shots in now. The alignment of the barrel to barrel channel is pretty good. Carving on the grip looks really great. Everything is flat and straight where it needs to be. Length of pull is 15.5 inches, which is spot on for me at 6'7". The finish is actually way better than what the photos show. Honestly, the only thing I would change is the cherry wood. Cherry is beautiful when finished up, and it does darken a lot over time, but it is not the hardest of hardwoods, and it will get some dings as I use this gun, as I don't own any Safe Queens. The next one I build for an upcoming 223 project will probably use a maple spine again, but I think I want to use a black walnut for the outer skin. I'll probably start that one in the spring or early summer. As always, thanks for watching and following along with this one. If you have questions or comments, please post below. I'll see you on the next one.